The crowd was on its feet, the band blaring pomp and circumstance when my phone buzzed with a message that turned the sunshine cold. Rows of blue and maize robes swayed as we shifted forward, a sea of mortarboards catching the light. Somewhere high in the bleachers, I knew my parents were watching, or at least sitting there out of obligation. Aaron's words from sophomore year crept back, uninvited. One day, he'll eat his words. I'd laughed at the time, dismissing it as wishful thinking. My fingers brushed against the folded scrap of paper buried in my tote, the one with my father's blunt scrawl. Madison, be realistic. I'd kept it, not as a talisman, but as a reminder. The brass section hit another triumphant swell as Dr. Karen Whitfield began her opening remarks. Her voice, magnified through the stadium speakers, echoed off the concrete and blended with the rustle of programs. I tried to focus on her, but my eyes wandered, scanning the stands until I found them. My father's jaw was set, his arms folded like he was enduring a chore. My mother sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, eyes darting everywhere but toward me. 5 years ago, I'd carried the first crude prototype of my recycled composite panel into his workshop, still smelling of resin and hope. He'd barely looked at it before waving me off. I'm not storing scrap metal dreams in here, Madison. I'd swallowed the sting, telling myself I'd prove him wrong. The phone buzzed again, harder this time, pulling me back to the present. I slipped it from my gown's hidden pocket, shielding the screen from the sun. The text from Robert Clark was short, efficient. Like a business memo, except colder. After today, don't expect any help from us. You're on your own. My jaw tightened until my teeth ached. The sunlight seemed to turn brittle. The cheers around me muffled by the rushing in my ears. I didn't move for a beat, letting the words settle like grit in water. Aaron, seated just to my left, caught the change in my posture. What is it? Her voice was low but edged with warning. Nothing, I murmured, sliding the phone back. She wasn't fooled. Show me. When I hesitated, she reached over and tugged it from my hand, scanning the screen. Her nostrils flared. Today? Really? What a move. I kept my gaze on the stage, on the blur of academic robes and university banners flapping against the spring sky. My fingers found the folded note again, feeling the worn crease, remembering the day it landed on my desk without a word. Erin leaned in, her voice a whisper meant to cut. One day, he'll regret that text. I exhaled slowly, my lips curving in something that wasn't quite a smile. Maybe that day's closer than you think. The applause swelled as a row of honorary degrees was announced, but my mind wasn't on the stage anymore. I was replaying every instance of his dismissals, every withheld nod of approval, every conversation that began with, "Be realistic," and ended with, "We won't back you." Then, another buzz in my palm, so quick I thought it was an echo from the last one. I glanced down. This time, it wasn't from my father, Paige Morales. Our company COO, big news. Call me when you can. Paige Morales never calls in the middle of a ceremony, unless something's on fire or about to change everything. The brass blared another triumphant measure as a fresh wave of graduates filed toward the stage. I hunched slightly, shielding my phone from the stadium glare, and slipped it to my ear, hoping no one on the platform noticed. "Tell me you're not busy," Paige said, her voice all business but with an unmistakable edge of excitement. "Define busy," I murmured, eyes tracking the procession as tassels swung in neat rhythm. Series C closed this morning. Horizon Global came in big, $120 million. We're now valued at $950 pre-money. She didn't pause, like if she slowed down the words might lose momentum. For a beat, the roar of applause blurred into white noise. My pulse thumped in my ears. $950 million. Erin caught my expression, her mouth forming a soundless, holy, before she bit it off with a grin that didn't fit the solemnity of the rows around us. Paige wasn't done. "Jonathan Wu wants a word, today if possible." I was about to answer when movement at the edge of my vision snagged my attention. My father, flanked by my mother, was making his way down the aisle between seating sections, stopping every few steps to clasp a hand or nod at someone. He didn't look at me, but his voice carried over the ambient cheer. "Still chasing pipe dreams," he said to a man I didn't recognize, his tone warm enough to seem like a joke, but pitched just right so I could hear it. "Probably on the phone begging for money." The words landed like they always did. Not a direct punch, but a steady grind meant to wear down the stone. I felt Erin stiffen beside me, her chin lifting in reflexive defense. My fingers slid into my bag, closing around the familiar crease of that folded scrap of paper. "Be realistic." The edges had worn soft, but the weight of it never changed. "Tell Jonathan I'll call after the ceremony," I said into the phone, making sure my voice carried none of the heat flooding my chest. "That's what I like to hear," Paige replied, brisk again. "Enjoy your day, Madison, you've earned it." The line clicked off just as Erin leaned toward me, voice low and fierce. "This is your moment. He just doesn't know it yet." I kept my eyes forward, scanning the stage, forcing my mouth into something resembling a neutral line. Inside, threads of adrenaline and restraint twisted together so tight it was almost hard to breathe. The stadium smelled faintly of sunscreen and cut grass. And somewhere in the upper decks, a vuvuzela blared, absurdly out of place against the string section's dignified swell. My phone vibrated again, stronger this time, and lit up with a name I'd only seen in press releases and high-level email threads. "Incoming call, Jonathan Wu." I could feel without looking that my father had closed the gap to within 2 rows. I took the call with my name still echoing from the loudspeakers, trying to keep my voice level while my father closed in like a verdict. My tassel was still swaying from the walk back to my seat, the applause fading into the steady hum of the next college being announced. I pressed the phone tight to my ear, shutting out everything but the voice on the other end. "Congratulations, Madison," Jonathan Wu said, each syllable crisp and deliberate. "You're everywhere. Bloomberg, TechCrunch, Forbes. Embargo lifted 2 minutes ago." I glanced at the scoreboard screens towering above the stands. The sun glared against them, but I could imagine the headlines scrolling in real time, my name threaded through all 3. A thin current of satisfaction worked its way through my ribs. Jonathan's tone sharpened, businesslike. "Horizon's committed to a 10-year partnership. Capital expenditure for 2 plants, starting immediately. A 3rd facility is contingent on EPA fast-track approvals. Signals are already positive. 2 plants. 10 years. I let the number settle in the air between us, feeling the weight of them. Erin, 2 seats down, angled her head just enough to catch my eye. Her gaze was a question I didn't answer. Jonathan went on. "I'd like you at next week's press conference, and I need you in Detroit this afternoon for a site visit." "Detroit?" My grip on the phone tightened. I could see the edge of the symbolic note in my bag, folded over itself so many times it felt like a stone. A flashback unspooled, uninvited. 2 years ago, our dining table. My father, coffee cup in hand, shaking his head. "Horizon are predators. We don't invite them to pick apart our books." The meeting had been exploratory, an idea to retrofit his asphalt line, but he'd killed it in 1 sentence. I'd sat there, watching the chance evaporate. Jonathan's voice brought me back. "They reassessed that legacy project last quarter, redirected the budget to EcoForge's composites program." As the words slid under my skin and stayed there. 2 rows up, my father's profile was etched against the bleachers. He'd paused, half-turned, as if some part of him had caught the drift of Jonathan's sentence. Erin's eyebrows climbed in silent emphasis. He heard that. I made a choice right then, the rule forming as neatly as if I'd rehearsed it. 1 more public jab from him and I'd take this call public. No malice, no performance, just clean, factual, surgical truth. Jonathan didn't slow. "And one more thing, our Detroit pilot replaced 38% virgin aggregate, cut costs 21% for a municipality your father once courted." His tone softened. "It's working. Public records will confirm it today." I sat still, the figures threading into my memory like coordinates on a map. There was a moral edge here, sharper than any boardroom win. Lower costs for a city that needed it, materials that wouldn't choke landfills, jobs shifting from an old model to a sustainable one. The brass section swelled again as another wave of names rolled through the PA system. My father's shadow fell across the row in front of me. I didn't look up, not yet. Then he leaned over the seat behind me, his voice low but pitched to carry. End the fantasy, Madison. My thumb hovered over the speaker icon. If you're as ready as I am to see what happens when truth meets the open air, stick with me. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the moment this conversation goes public. I didn't raise my voice, I raised the volume. The crowd's roar came in tides, brass surging, cheers folding, then a hush you could hear. I tapped the speaker icon. The chime was a gavel. Aaron's hand stilled on the armrest. My father's posture hardened. Jonathan, I said evenly, would you mind if I put you on speaker? For transparency with family. Of course, he replied, unfussed, the confidence of someone prepared to be quoted. He didn't perform, he reported. EcoForge Solutions closed its Series C this morning, $120 million led by Horizon Global. Current valuation, $950 million. Letters of intent with 3 states are executed. EPA pilot waivers are already logged. We project 1,500 new jobs across 2 manufacturing plants. Air shifted across our block like grass turning with wind. Heads tipped, phones up. The faculty marshal stopped mid-step and listened. I could feel the muscles in my back loosening, not with triumph but with relief. Truth laid out like a clean ledger. Jonathan's cadence stayed measured. Audited life cycle assessments show a 72% reduction in emissions versus virgin aggregate. Participating municipalities saved 21% on resurfacing. Numbers, not adjectives. They threaded the distance between rows and landed where opinion used to live. Erin didn't look at me. She watched my father. EcoForge isn't just a business, Jonathan said, voice carrying without strain. It's a blueprint for communities to thrive without destroying the planet. I let the silence do half the work. Then, level as a spirit level, I set a single line beside his. This is what you called scrap metal dreams. My palm found the familiar creases of the folded note. Paper warmed under skin. Across the aisle, a little boy clapped because everyone else did. The ordinary sweetness of the moment kept the scene from curdling. Jonathan continued, gentle and precise. For the record, Horizon paused a legacy asphalt proposal last quarter after EcoForge's Detroit pilot outperformed expectations. Public record, H-Zen 1342. No flourish, only consequence. A ripple of murmurs passed from seat to seat. A camera lens focused, then clicked. I saw the exact instant Dad understood the circumference of what he dismissed. The color leaving, the set of the mouth that used to deliver instructions on job sites, now searching for footing on new ground. Applause started at the edge, uncertain, then gathered itself and moved inward. The marshal gave me a small nod, the kind you give a student who finally answers the theorem cleanly on the board. I didn't smile, I kept breathing. All morning I had swallowed the metallic taste of being misjudged. Now data rinsed it away. No gloating, no raise of the chin. Only the steadying feel of a load transferred to the beam designed to bear it. Around us, the band slid into a quieter figure. Sky-washed light spilled over mortarboards like water over slate. I thought about the workers who would clock into those plants, about procurement officers who would sign for materials that cost less and harm less, about streets that would hold in August heat without chewing themselves to gravel. Small changes, multiplied. Erin finally glanced at me, not to celebrate, just to check the seal on the moment. I nodded once. She turned her eyes back to my father. He stood still, as if motion might break something fragile. My mother's hand found his wrist. Her thumb drew 1, 2 small arcs, a private metronome. Jonathan, I said. Thank you. My voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. Congratulations, Madison, he said. We'll see you soon. The line stayed open, ambient crowd noise sifting through like wind in the reeds. I didn't feel it. I didn't apologize. Nearby cameras blinked. I had raised the volume, the rest could arrive on its own. Robert, horse, we need to talk. Now. I end the call, slip the folded note into my palm, and stand. We stepped out of the noise and into the shade. 3 people carrying years of words unsaid. The air under the oak was cooler, calmer. The crowd's roar now a distant shimmer of sound. Leaves whispered overhead, their shadows shifting across the grass. My fingers tightened around the folded note, its creases pressing into my palm. Robert didn't circle the point. I was wrong, he said, voice low and uneven. Not just a little. Completely. I let the silence stretch before I answered. Wrong about what, exactly? His gaze didn't waver. About you. About your work. I didn't just doubt you. I told people you were wasting your life. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. All I did was feed it. I felt the old sting rise, but didn't let it spill. Ecoforge's Detroit pilot, I said carefully, outperformed your proposal. It also kept a paving contractor from laying off his crew this spring, the same contractor you partnered with. He never knew I was your daughter. Linda's eyes widened, the moisture catching light. You? Saved his company? Not for him, I said, shaking my head. For the workers. For the families who depend on those jobs. Robert's shoulders sagged as if something had finally unhooked from them. I'm ashamed, he admitted, and proud. Both at once. I don't know how that works, but it's true. I took the note from my palm and held it out. His hands looked older in the green-filtered light as he unfolded the paper. The ink was still sharp. Be realistic. He looked at it for a long moment, then folded it again and pressed it back into my hand. Keep it, he said quietly. It's part of your story now. I slipped it into my bag, feeling its weight change. No longer an anchor, but a marker. I never needed saving, I said, steady. But somehow, I ended up saving you. He didn't deny it. His mouth tightened in something between a smile and surrender. Linda's hand rested lightly on his arm, grounding him. A vibration cut through the stillness. I pulled out my phone, an email from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. An invitation to join the National Sustainable Infrastructure Advisory Council. A second buzz. Aaron's text. Game's not over. The leaves above shifted again, scattering sunlight over us in broken patterns, as if the day itself was moving on to the next chapter. If you've walked with me through this journey, from the roar of the stadium to the quiet under the oak, then you know how much it costs to stand my ground without raising my voice. I want to hear from you. Tell me if you think I handled it right, if my choice to let the truth speak for itself resonated with you. Share your own stories of proving someone wrong with action, not argument, and remember this. The note that once tried to limit you can become the proof of how far you've come, if you keep it. The waves of Lake Michigan lapped gently as I stood on the deck of my lakefront cottage, watching the sunrise streak the sky in gold. This house was my triumph. 15 years of grinding in tech, saving obsessively, and saying no when it hurt. I'm Julia Bennett, 41, and this place wasn't inherited or gifted. I